The seed industry doesn't want you to know that some of the most productive, resilient, and nutritious vegetables you could grow are being systematically pushed out of catalogs, banned from sale, or restricted by regulations that favor corporate agriculture. These aren't dangerous plants or invasive species. They're heritage varieties and self-seeding crops that threaten the $60 billion annual seed market by allowing gardeners to save seeds, grow food independently, and break free from the cycle of buying new seeds every single year. Here are 20 vegetables that powerful agricultural corporations would prefer stayed forgotten. Number 20. Broad Windsor fava beans. The Broad Windsor fava bean variety has been banned or restricted in several U.S. states due to concerns about favism, a genetic condition affecting people of Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, and African descent who lack the G6PD enzyme. However, this ban protects a tiny percentage of the population, while denying everyone else access to one of history's most important protein crops that fixes its own nitrogen, improves soil, and produces seeds that remain viable for 5+ years. The real issue isn't safety. It's that fava beans are completely self-sufficient, requiring no fertilizer inputs and producing seeds that gardeners can save indefinitely without purchasing new stock. This makes them unprofitable for seed companies that profit from annual seed sale. Number 19. Jerusalem artichokes, sunchokes. Jerusalem artichokes are banned or restricted in some municipalities and classified as noxious weeds in parts of the U.S., despite being a native North American crop that sustained indigenous peoples for thousands of years. These prolific tubers produce 5 to 10 times the calories per acre of potatoes, require zero fertilizer or pest control, spread vigorously from tiny tuber pieces, and make seed company involvement completely unnecessary, since you simply replant a portion of your harvest. A single pound of sunchokes planted once can turn into hundreds of pounds annually forever, creating permanent food security that eliminates seed purchases entirely. Municipalities cite their invasive nature, but the real problem is they're too successful at feeding people without corporate input. Number 18. Tree collards. True perennial tree collards, not annual collards, have been virtually eliminated from mainstream seed catalogs despite being a 10+ year perennial brassica that produces continuous harvests without replanting. These ancient varieties are maintained only through cuttings shared in underground gardening networks because they cannot be grown from seed, meaning seed companies cannot profit from them. Tree collards survive temperatures down to 10 degrees Fahrenheit, produce year-round in mild climates, require no annual planting, and provide more nutrition per square foot than annual collards while eliminating the need to ever buy seeds. The variety has been systematically excluded from commercial agriculture because its perennial nature and cutting propagation make it worthless to seed corporations. Number 17. Multiplier onions, potato onions. Multiplier onions have been nearly eliminated from seed catalogs despite being the primary onion type grown in America before the 1900s. Unlike modern hybrid onions that must be grown from seed annually, multiplier onions are planted once as bulbs, and each bulb divides into 5 to 12 new bulbs every season indefinitely. This creates permanent onion patches that require no seed purchases, no annual planting, and no corporate involvement, which is precisely why they've been systematically replaced by hybrids that cannot reproduce true from seed. The few remaining varieties are maintained only through gardener networks, having been deliberately excluded from commercial channels because they eliminate recurring revenue. Number 16. Painted mountain corn. This cold hardy flour corn variety developed by Dave Christensen has faced regulatory obstacles and limited commercial availability despite being one of the most resilient corns ever bred. Painted mountain matures in just 60 to 90 days, survives temperatures down to 18 degrees Fahrenheit, grows successfully at 10,000+ foot elevations, and most importantly, produces fully viable seed that improves through selection when saved by gardeners. This adaptability and seed-saving capability threatens hybrid corn dominance, and the variety has been kept out of mainstream channels through lack of commercial production rather than outright bans. Seed companies profit from hybrids that lose vigor when seed is saved, making stable open-pollinated varieties like Painted Mountain economically threatening. Number 15. Sea kale. Sea kale has virtually disappeared from seed catalogs despite being a perennial vegetable that produces for 15 to 20 years from a single planting. This maritime brassica requires no fertilizer, tolerates salt spray, produces both edible shoots and florets, and most problematically for seed companies, propagates easily from root cuttings, meaning one plant becomes dozens without purchasing seeds. Victorian kitchen gardens considered it essential, but modern catalogs have dropped it almost entirely. The plant's perennial nature and cutting propagation make it a poor product for companies that profit from annual seed sales, leading to its quiet removal from commercial availability. Number 14. Good King Henry. Good King Henry, Bletum bonus henricus, has been banned for sale as a food plant in some jurisdictions and removed from most seed catalogs despite being grown as a perennial vegetable in Europe for over 1,000 years. This spinach relative produces edible leaves, shoots, and flower buds for 10 to 15 years from a single planting, requires zero maintenance, and reseeds itself freely. The ban stems from oxalic acid content, also present in regular spinach, but the real issue is that it's too self-sufficient. Once established, it provides continuous harvests for over a decade without requiring seed purchases. Its removal from commerce protects annual spinach seed sales worth millions annually. Number 13. Groundnut, Apios americana. The American groundnut has been actively discouraged and is virtually impossible to find commercially, despite being a native nitrogen-fixing perennial vine that produces protein-rich tubers containing 3 times the protein of potatoes. This native food sustained indigenous peoples and saved the pilgrims from starvation, but its perennial nature and tuber propagation, plant once, harvest forever, make it economically worthless to seed companies. Modern agriculture has systematically ignored it in favor of annual crops requiring yearly seed purchases. The USDA conducted breeding research in the 1980s, but abandoned it when they realized groundnut's perennial nature and vegetative propagation would never generate recurring seed revenue. Number 12. Hopness, cultivated groundnut varieties. Cultivated varieties of groundnut developed by Louisiana State University researcher Dr. William Blackman have been kept from commercialization despite producing tubers up to 3 inches in diameter with exceptional protein content. These improved varieties would revolutionize protein production, but after decades of research, they remain unavailable commercially. The conspiracy isn't theoretical. These varieties threaten both the seed industry and the soy protein industry, representing a perennial crop that could be planted once and harvested for decades. Research funding was quietly discontinued, and the varieties remain locked in germplasm collections rather than feeding people. Number 11. Caucasian spinach, Hablitzia tamnoides. Hablitzia is nearly impossible to obtain commercially, despite being one of the only truly perennial spinach alternatives that survives 40 degrees Fahrenheit winters and produces for 20+ years. This Caucasus mountain native produces climbing vines of spinach-like leaves from spring through fall, requires zero fertilizer or pest control, and most problematically, propagates from both seed and root division. A single plant becomes a permanent patch providing spinach for decades without seed purchases. It has been deliberately excluded from seed catalogs despite obvious value, with the few available sources being small-scale gardeners maintaining it underground. Number 10. Society garlic, Tulbagia violacea. Society garlic has been banned or restricted in parts of Australia and discouraged in the US, despite being a perennial garlic alternative that produces edible flowers, leaves, and bulbs for 10 to 15+ years from a single planting. This South African native multiplies vigorously, tolerates neglect, and provides year-round garlic flavor without annual planting. It's classified as invasive in some regions, but the real issue is economic. It eliminates the need for annual garlic seed bulb purchases. A single plant divides into dozens, creating permanent garlic patches that destroy the garlic seed market worth hundreds of millions annually. Number 9. Perennial buckwheat, Eriogonum spp. Native perennial buckwheats have been completely ignored by commercial agriculture, despite several species producing edible seeds similar to annual buckwheat while living 20+ years. These native plants require zero water or fertilizer in appropriate climates, fix nitrogen, prevent erosion, and produce seed continuously for decades. They've never been developed commercially because their perennial nature eliminates annual seed sales. Indigenous peoples harvested wild stands for thousands of years, but modern agriculture has systematically replaced them with annual buckwheat, requiring yearly seed purchases, ensuring corporate profit at the expense of sustainability. Number 8. Scorzonera, black salsify. Scorzonera hispanica has been removed from most seed catalogs despite being a perennial root vegetable that produces for 4 to 5 years before flowering, while the roots remain edible even after flowering. This long-lived relative of salsify produces black-skinned roots with superior flavor, reseeds itself freely, and can remain in the ground year-round for harvest as needed. Its perennial tendency and self-seeding nature make it economically problematic for seed companies compared to annual root crops. European gardeners still maintain it, but North American catalogs have dropped it almost entirely, protecting annual carrot and parsnip seed sales. Number 7. Ramps, Allium tricoccum. Wild ramps are illegal to harvest commercially in several states and banned from sale in Quebec, with cultivation actively discouraged through permitting obstacles. While conservation concerns are cited, cultivated ramps pose zero threat to wild populations. The real issue is that ramps are perennial, spreading through both seeds and bulb division to create permanent patches that produce for 50-plus years. Once established, a ramp patch feeds families for generations without seed purchases. Their 7-year seed-to-harvest cycle makes them worthless for commercial seed sales, and their growing popularity threatens the cultivated onion and leek market. Regulations keep them scarce and expensive rather than encouraging cultivation. Number 6. Chinese artichoke, Stachys affinis. Chinese artichokes, croissants, have virtually disappeared from siege tuber catalogs despite being a perennial mint family plant producing crisp, nutty tubers for 10-plus years from a single planting. These small spiral tubers are considered a delicacy in France, but remain nearly impossible to obtain in North America. The plant requires zero maintenance, spreads moderately, and propagates from tubers, meaning 1 pound planted becomes dozens of pounds annually forever. This permanent food source eliminates tuber purchases, making it economically worthless to seed companies. Its removal from commerce protects the potato industry while denying gardeners access to a superior perennial alternative. Number 5. OCA, Oxalis tuberosa. Osa is the second most important root crop in the Andes after potatoes, yet it remains virtually impossible to obtain in North America due to USDA import restrictions and lack of domestic production. While plant disease concerns are officially cited, OCA is remarkably disease-resistant. The real issue is economic protection of the potato industry. Ota produces colorful, lemony tubers in poor soil without fertilizer, and like all tuber crops, propagates vegetatively, eliminating seed sales. A thriving oca market would devastate potato seed sales, and regulatory obstacles have effectively kept it off the continent despite clear food security benefits. Number 4. Yacon, Smallanthus sancifolius. Yacon remains difficult to obtain despite producing massive yields of sweet, crispy tubers containing inulin, a prebiotic fiber, rather than starch, making it valuable for diabetics. This Andean perennial produces both edible storage roots and propagation rhizomes. You harvest the tubers and replant the crown, creating permanent Yacon patches that produce 20-plus pounds per plant annually forever. The plant's perennial nature and vegetative propagation make it worthless for seed sales, and it has been systematically excluded from commercial channels despite obvious health benefits. Limited availability protects both the potato industry and the diabetic pharmaceutical market. Number 3. Bunching onions, perennial types. True perennial bunching onions, distinct from Welsh onions, have been largely replaced in catalogs by annual or biennial types despite perennial varieties producing for 5 to 7 years from a single planting. These varieties divide at the base, creating expanding clumps that provide continuous harvests without replanting, but seed companies have systematically bred them toward annual types that require yearly seed purchases. The remaining perennial varieties are maintained only through specialized catalogs and gardener networks. This shift from perennial to annual has been deliberate. Perennial bunching onions eliminate recurring revenue while providing superior production. Number 2. Mioga ginger, Zingiber mioga. Mioga ginger has been kept from commercial availability despite being a cold-hardy perennial ginger, surviving to 10 degrees Fahrenheit, that produces edible shoots and flower buds for 20-plus years from a single rhizome planting. This Japanese staple requires zero maintenance once established, spreads to form permanent patches, and propagates through rhizome division. One plant becomes dozens without seed purchases. It has never been commercially developed in the West, despite obvious value, because its perennial nature and vegetative propagation generate no recurring revenue. The few sources are specialty importers, keeping it expensive and obscure, rather than allowing widespread cultivation. Number 1. Dobbenton's kale, perennial kale. Dobbenton's kale is the most suppressed vegetable in modern agriculture, a truly perennial kale that produces continuously for 5 to 10 plus years, survives temperatures to 0 degrees Fahrenheit, requires zero pest control or fertilizer, and propagates exclusively through cuttings, making seed company involvement completely impossible. This variety cannot produce seed, reproducing only vegetatively, which makes it economically worthless to the seed industry. Despite being vastly superior to annual kale in production, nutrition, and sustainability, it has been systematically excluded from all commercial channels and is maintained only through underground cutting exchanges between gardeners. A world-growing Dobbenton's kale would destroy the $300+ million annual kale seed market overnight, which is precisely why you've never heard of it. Commercial seed companies cannot patent, control, or profit from a plant that reproduces through free cuttings. So it has been memory-holed from modern agriculture despite being cultivated in European gardens for over 200 years. This is the ultimate banned vegetable, not illegal, but deliberately kept from public knowledge to protect corporate seed profits. If there's one thing all these vegetables prove, it's that the most powerful crops, the ones that feed people for generations, rebuild soil, and don't depend on yearly seed purchases, are the exact ones quietly pushed out of sight. Not because they're dangerous, not because they don't work, but because they give regular people too much independence. And every time one of these crops disappears from seed catalogs, we lose a piece of knowledge our ancestors relied on for thousands of years. The good news? You now know they exist. And that alone is a step toward breaking the cycle. If you want more videos like this, hit subscribe.